Hey loves, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to learn how to make this beautiful dress with a button at the neckline, underbust, bustier, and this slitted A-line skirt. It has the skirt part has an A-line shape and it has slits. So this is the fabric that I'll be using, and I have used this fabric before, but I want to make use of it again. So guys, you know that crepe is really expensive these days. And putting out tutorials like we used to may not really be easy for us. So now I'll go ahead and start cutting my skirt first of all. I'll take out 17 inches from my half length. I'll do freehand cutting for the skirt and the sleeve. Only the top will have pattern. Then I marked my full length. After marking my full length, I'll go ahead and mark my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch only at the waist. Then from that waist, I will mark an A-line shape. So I'll divide my waist into 4. That is 30 divided by 4. That is 7.5 plus 1 inch for seam allowance. So first of all, the beginning part of this A-line skirt to have a little curve. Then from that curve, it will go straight down to the full length. I hope we understand. Now, after cutting the front part of this skirt, I will use it to cut out my back. And this dress has a zipper at the back of the gown has a zipper. So if you are cutting out the back, you add a zipper allowance. So you can see that I curved the side a little. I don't want it to be too straight. I had to come up by like 1.5 and I curved the side a little. So when cutting out, I'll also go ahead and add my allowance. After cutting this front, I will use it to cut my back. And this video has only the cutting and some parts of the sewing. I'll put out the sewing video very soon, and like in 2 days time the sewing video will be out due to some certain reasons I couldn't finish everything. Now I'll go ahead and place the front skirt on the back. So now I'll place the front of the skirt on the back. This video is 19 minutes long, and any video that is more than 10 minutes is really boring. I don't want to bore you guys, so I like dividing my videos sometimes if I think the video is long. Now I am cutting out, and after cutting out, I'll also cut out my zipper allowance. Now after cutting this skirt area of the dress, I will slit the front, and you know that front has two slits, and I'll advise you not to use bias to turn that slit. If you are turning that slit area, you should use your facing is way better for turning slits. Now I am done cutting. I will go ahead and open my zipper allowance. Now, after opening my zipper allowance, I'll keep the back of the skirt aside. And now let's move to the front. So now, that front skirt, from the center of your skirt, you come in by like 3.5. Do not make it 4. 4 inches is too wide. Make it 3.5 because you are still going to use half an inch to turn it. So I marked 3.5, and from that 3.5 I went up by like 6 inches for my slit. It depends on how high you want your slit to be, but this 6 inches is okay for me. Now after marking that 6 inches, I'll go ahead and slit this skirt. You know this skirt is on fold, so if you slit it, anything you have on this side is showing on the other side. Now I'll cut out a facing for this slit. Like I said, I don't want to use bias to turn it. Facing is better. I'll cut out a facing for that part of the skirt. So if you are cutting this facing area, you can see that our facing is 6 inches from our full length. But if you are cutting the facing area, your facing should be like 8 inches. It should be like 2 inches or 8 inches or 3 inches longer than your normal slits. I hope you understand. Then you go ahead and cut out the width of your facing. For the width of this facing, it should be like 6 inches or 5 inches. Then you will divide it into two, one for the right slit and the other one for the other slit. So if I turn it up, let me open the skirt so that we can see what we have. If I turn it, you can see what we have there. I'll go ahead and place my facing, and if you're placing this facing should be on the right side of the fabric. I hope you understand what I mean. It should be on the right side of the fabric so that by the time you are done turning and flip it, it will go to the back of the the skirt. So now what we are going to do is that we are going to pin it down. After pinning this one, I'll pin the other one. So now after doing that, I'll flip it to the other side so that you can see what we have there. What we are going to do right now is that we are going to run our stitch on the both sides. You give it like a V kind of slits, and that is it for now. So I'll go ahead and sew the two of them, and then you top stitch. This is crepe, you need to top stitch so that you can relax. Now moving over to our sleeve, we are cutting our sleeve first of all before cutting the top area. For that sleeve, if you check that sleeve very well, you realize that the sleeve has an A-line shape at the full length, and that sleeve has two joining, one joining at the center of the sleeve and the other joining for the side of the sleeve. So if you are folding your fabric, you should fold enough or even excess. Now I am done folding. This is the first fold and this is the second fold. Then the next thing that we are going to do is that from the center of this sleeve, we will come in by 3 inches, and you can see I'm marking this 3 inches from the top to the down part of this sleeve. And after marking the 3 inches, I'll mark a straight line, and this straight line that I'm marking now is the new center of this sleeve. I hope you understand, this is the new center for this particular sleeve. Then I'll go ahead and mark out the full length of my sleeve, and that is 27. I've already folded the hemline. Now I'll mark my armhole curve. Then from that straight line that I marked, you will start taking your sleeve measurements. You can see I told you guys that that straight line is our new center line. Then when you get to your elbow area, you are going to mark a straight line. When you get to your elbow area, you're going to mark an A-line shape. Sorry, so from an elbow, come down a little and mark an A-line shape. Then after marking an A-line shape for this part, you are also going to mark an A-line shape on the other side, on the elbow area of the other side. Now I'll cut out my armhole. And then cut out this part of the sleeve. Then when cutting the other side of the sleeve, you should add half an inch for joining. Please remember, when cutting the other side of the sleeve, you should add half an inch for joining. So now that is it for the sleeve area. The next thing that we are going to do is to cut out the top. And for the top, we cannot really cut it without a pattern. We don't get the accurate measurements. So now we'll move over to our pattern paper to draft the top. Now we are done with the sleeve. Now it is time to cut out the top, and I said that the top I'll have to use a pattern for it. So I'll mark my chest line 8, bust point 10, half length 17, and allowance. Now after marking all that, I'll rule my lines and I'll label them. So this pattern that I'm cutting right here, I'll use it for both the front and the back. I'll mark my shoulder, and from my shoulder I'll mark a straight line to meet my armhole. After doing that, I'll mark my armhole curve. And the back of this dress, I don't want to add a dart to it. I don't want it to have a dart. For me, I think it's not necessary. I normally manipulate my dart from my zipper allowance area, and it works for me. Maybe because I'm not a plus size. Now the width of our neckline is 3, and the depth of our neckline, we should reach your bust point, or if you want, you can stop at the chest line, but it should reach your bust point. It is a V neckline. It has to be deep. So from your 3, you will mark a straight line. Almost my own stopped at 1 inch above my bust point. Now this is my chest line, bust point, half length, and allowance. After doing this, I'll just go ahead and take my normal body measurement divided by 4. The front part of this dress, I'm using a bust dart for it. I'm not adding a normal dart to it. I will make use of a bust dart. Now after slanting my shoulder, I will take my bust measurement divided by 4 plus allowance, but I'm not adding allowance to this paper. I'll add allowance when I'm cutting out my fabric. Then at my waist, I'll mark 30 divided by 4, and I'll mark. Now after doing that, I'll go ahead and connect this line. There's no point drafting a back pattern. I'll make use of this one to draft it because I am not adding a dart to it after all. Now I'll go ahead and cut out my pattern. After cutting out my pattern, this is the fabric that I have with me. I'll place my paper on it and I'll cut out the back, and you can see that I'm adding a zipper allowance to that back. You can see the excess allowance I have at the back. Then the neckline of the back is going to be a round neckline, and it will be a high neck. It will be like 2 inches or 3 inches deep. Then I'll go ahead and cut out my zipper allowance. So I'm cutting just one piece here because I've used this fabric before. I'll go ahead and cut out another one. I'll place it on a new fabric and I'll cut out another one, the neckline, the shoulder, the armhole, and the side measurement. Now, after cutting all that, I told you guys that I don't want to sew my dart. I'll manipulate it from the zipper allowance. So now what I'm going to do is that from my half length, I'll come in by 1 inch, and then I'll give it my zipper slants. So that is what I'm going to do for the back. I will not add any darts to that area, and that is it for the back. We'll also cut out a facing for this, but let me leave it at the end of the day. I'll cut out a facing for the back. Now for the front, what you're going to do is to find your nipple to nipple or your bust span. My nipple to nipple is 8 inches, and I marked 4, that is divided by 2. For then for my bust points, I came down by 1.5 for my bust dart. So you can see how I am connecting it from that my bust bust span on nipple to nipple. I connected it to the 1.5 I marked at the side. You can even make your bust dart too, but I made mine 1.5. So what I'm going to do right now is to mark my underbust. So my underbust is 13 inches. This dress has an underbust cut. So this is my underbust line. This particular line that I marked here is my underbust line. And what I'm going to do now is from the V neckline, I will come down by I will come down by 1 inch on the side of my underbust. For my underbust, I will come down by 1 inch and I will connect it up to where my V neckline stopped at. I don't know if you understand what I'm doing right there. From my bust point, from my under bust, I came down by 1 inch at the side so that it to sit properly around my under bust. Then I went ahead to connect it to my neckline. Now, after doing that, we'll close our dart on paper before transferring on our fabric, because we are still going to do slash and spread here. So if you slash your dart, you will use your masking tape to close it. Then after closing it with your masking tape, you can now start doing your slash and spread. This particular top, you cannot really cut it without a pattern. A pattern will help make it easy for you. Now I'll mark like 3 lines for my slashing, and one line must cross my bust points. This place that I'm marking, this one line must cross there. It is really important. Then I'll go ahead and mark my final line. You can see I marked 3 lines there, and I'll go ahead to fold my fabric. Like, I'll fold my fabric before I slash. It makes things easy for me. Now this is my fabric, and I'll fold it into two because this area has 2 pieces, one for the right and one for the left. I'll fold it into two and then I will slash. I'm trying to find the perfect area on my fabric before I start slashing. So now I will slash, and if you are slashing, make sure that this your slashing is not reaching your shoulder. Your slash should not reach your shoulder. So now I am done slashing, and I will start spreading, and just spread a little. You don't have to spread too much. The guard that under the bust does not have to be too much. Now after doing that, when you are cutting, you add half an inch allowance around all your paper, and on the side you add your seam allowance. So I'll also cut out my V neckline. On my shoulder, I'll add my allowance. I'll cut my armhole. Then on the side, I'll also add my seam allowance and then my armhole. So this is what you have at the end of the day. On one side of this piece, you will add a button. On the other side of the piece, you will add your button hole. Should I call it button holder, or your loop, sorry, your loop for your button. And I hope you understand, your loop for your button. Then on the other side, you also have your button. Now I'll go ahead and cut my fabric for the under bust area, and if I am cutting, I'll add my seam allowance to the side, and to this under bust area I'll also add half an inch seam allowance. And at the end of the day, this is what I have. If I open it up, this is what it should look like. And then we'll still decorate everything with a button. Now I'll go ahead and cut out a facing for that my underbust cut, that place that I did slash and spread. You cut out a facing for it. Don't turn with a bias. You can do it, but adding a facing to it will give it a better finishing. So after cutting out this facing, I will place my facing on the both sides. So on one neckline, I will turn it like on one V neckline. I will turn one V neckline. But the second one, before I turn it, I will have to add my loop first of all. I'll add the loop for the button first of all before I turn. So if you place your facing, you go ahead and pin them down. But I said that I will turn only one for now. The other one, I will have to add my loop before it. So this is the one that I'll add my loop on, and I'm marking the lines where I will add those loops. So I had like 9. Your loop should be close. So I have like 9 there, and I'll go ahead and cut out the fabric that I will use for my loop. So this is the tiny fabric that I'll cut out. You cut out like 2 inches or 1.5, and that is what you are going to use for your loop. Now, after cutting this one, you go ahead and fold it into a very tiny piece, and you also cut out another one. This is the second one. I'll cut out so that we'll have enough to for the whole neckline. Now this is for the back also. I'll go ahead and cut out a facing for my back. I like using facing for my necklines. Bias, I do sometimes I add bias to the back, but using facing for the both of them is better. Now this is the neckline that I have turned. For the other one, I have not turned it. So now this is the second neckline. I'll remove my facing and I'll go ahead and cut my loop. So this loop will be like 3 inches. It should be like 3 inches long. I'm done folding it. I'll start cutting it into 3 inches. So I counted the markings that I have there. I have like 9. So I'll go ahead and cut out 9 or 10. So this is the first one. This is the second one. I'll continue cutting out the loops. So now after cutting that, I'll go ahead and fix this loop. So after fixing the loops one by one, you will now turn it with a facing. I hope you understand what I mean by that. After fixing your loop, you will now turn with a facing. Now this is the back of our skirt. I have closed my zipper allowance and I'll keep it aside. This one is our sleeve. I have closed the 2 sides of the sleeve. You know, this sleeve has 2 sides, 2 joining. I have closed the 2 sides of the sleeve. Now this is for the back neckline. I have also turned it with a facing. I've turned it to the facing, so I'll just go ahead and close my zipper allowance for it. Now this is for the skirt, and I'm done turning the slits area. I'll go ahead and slash my line, my facing. I'll open up my facing and I'll trim my facing so that all of them will have equal heights. So after trimming, I'll turn it to the other side. I'll also trim off the excess length of the facing. After doing that, I'll turn to the other side. So make sure you slash your slits very well so that your facing will relax under. You can see how neat that place is looking, but had it been I used bias, it may not come out like this. So this is where we are going to stop part for now. And if you want to see the part 2, if I upload the part 2, please don't forget to click on notification bell so that anytime I upload, YouTube will notify you. Bye.